My name is Zaki Manian, co-founder of Sommelier. Sommelier is an example of what you can build in a chain abstracted world. Sommelier is chain abstraction built with the technology that was available in 2021 and some improvements. But I guess I was asked to talk a little bit about security. I've been working on sort of the security properties of multi-chain messaging apps for, I don't know, 10 years at this point. I think it's a little bit of an interesting question, right? Cool, we're building this chain abstracted world. How will any of this ever be secure? We can't secure smart contracts. How are we going to be able to build anything that's remotely usable in this world? And in this proposed architecture. So, 2014, 2015, what did I think was going to happen? I thought we would have standardized light clients, so we would live in a world of L1s, and everyone would have, people would implement well-vetted light client implementations, and they would all support sort of authenticating messages between them. I thought we would have standardized cross-chain messaging, so that there would be a strong consolidation around a single format, the way the internet consolidated around HTTP. And that we would have a relatively small number of implementations that were shared widely across the industry, and we'd have, the many eyes makes all bugs shallow phenomenon. We didn't get that. Basically, every cross-chain messaging protocol that I'm aware of has had a catastrophic bug in it that has either been exploited or not exploited. But they've all, many of them have been white-hatted, many of them have been found in prod by teams who work on them and people have raced to fix them, but they've all had catastrophic bugs. We've had many billions of dollars stolen and apparently funding North Korean nuclear proliferation, which is great. We've had nothing resembling security model standardization. Rather than everything can be a light client, we've had a lot of L1, we have more consensus protocols that anyone will build a light client for in the reasonable future. Teams like Ethereum build protocols where light clients are really hard to build. Light clients have definitely not become the standard. And then we have the entire modular ecosystem, which has a very complex notion of a light client that is hard to sometimes reconcile with the idea of fast bridges. And then every time someone comes up with a new idea, they try to wrap a token around their interoperability standard, and I don't know that that's helping anything. Why did we get this way? I think one of it is, which I'm partially responsible for, is the Cosmos team over-engineered IBC in a way that makes implementations take, on average 2 years for every new chain. And as a result, almost always there's some other bridging protocol that gets established there long before IBC gets built. Sometimes when you have Ethereum, it takes 5 years to build implementation. Every time you build a new consensus protocol, a light client is a 5 to 10 year research problem. And we keep building new consensus protocols. And again, what light clients mean in the modular ecosystem is not something that I think anyone fully reconciled or understands. And then every rollup team has hand-rolled their own interoperability bridge to ETH. None of them share any code. It's complete madness. And then bridges briefly appear to be good business models when they look like asset issuers, because being a stablecoin asset issuer is a great business model. But then they get commoditized into being message passing layers. And that also kind of is a problem because there's not really a moat around them. Probably the biggest ray of sunshine is ZK maturation. So in interoperability, zero-knowledge proofs are the universal solvent. If we have mature ZK, we can succinctly verify the integrity of our counterparty's computational process. And therefore we don't really, that provides the most iron, a succinct verification of consensus, a light client, and a succinct verification of your computational process. give you the absolute floor of counterparty risk. But we're nowhere near close to that world, though we're like making staggering progress towards it. Which is, and the reasons are, one, there are always going to be circuit bugs for a long time. We're very far from sort of formally verified ZK implementations of protocols. And then the other thing is provers are slow, and there will always be a market for fast bridges. So what are we trying to do? The old game around interoperability has always been like protocol TVL bootstrapping. You can't have liquidity, you can't have users until you bootstrap TVL. So what we do is we push all of the interoperability risk onto retail, and we say to retail, hey, we're going to create tokens and mint those tokens and pay you for absorbing this risk of bootstrapping liquidity in our protocol. We can actually move away from that. The models that the previous speakers have talked about, where we're talking about total value accessible in any new environment, no longer requires us to bootstrap liquidity from zero as every new thing gets built. So we can plug new applications and new execution environments into existing familiar user flows. And so like new dexes get spun up, you made a better dex, it plugs into an existing routing layer like Squid or Skip or anything else that gets built. And then developers should be able to abstract over these heterogeneous models. And we can build frameworks for making sense of this stuff. So better UX hopefully involves better safety. If we can push more of the risks of dealing with interoperability, so if you start with a Bitcoin and you end up with like USDC on Noble, the market maker has to know about interoperability, know about the interoperability systems, absorb that risk. The user starts with a Bitcoin on its native chain and USDC on Noble or on ETH or on Arbitrum, where it is natively issued. And so like that risk sort of gets absorbed by more institutional players, and more institutional players are going to tend to like push harder on these questions of like, is this interoperability protocol acceptably secure? They can have proactive monitoring, they can for their own audits, etc. Application builders will also be more of the players. So like, if you build a chain abstracted app like what Dean was showing on Agoric, where you're like abstracting over something like Axel or GMT, IBC, etc. It's more of a developer concern, like what interoperability protocol you're using rather than a user concern. I think that's a better world. And then, what Ilya was talking about with Mir, where you're starting to see an expansion like Thorchain, which I think I first met the Thorchain people in 2018. Now Thorchain is doing like 1% of Bitcoin spot volume, and like an enormous amount of like Bitcoin Tether flows. And it's basically cryptography is the simplest interoperability layer. If we can have these mature multi-party signers, they can be in many ways like a simple and robust interoperability layer for many user flows. So again, I've had some experience building these things. When we started out building Sommelier. So Sommelier is this app that you basically deposit funds into vaults, and then there is an entire app chain that is running a very sophisticated sort of validation and governance system that allows third-party strategists to deploy those funds in a variety of DeFi protocols. But a user has no idea that, it looks just like an Ethereum or an Arbitrum or an Optimism or Base app. We strung together CCIP, Axel or GMP, IBC, and an intense framework to make all of this possible. But again, if you're a user, you don't see any of that. And I think that's going to be the future. Thinking about liveness failures and safety failures in those protocols is probably the biggest part of a year-long development process to make this possible. I think the future, though, is going to be frameworks that people build that embed best practices from recovering from like liveness or safety failures in the framework itself, and then we can have abstractions that encapsulate all of that. And this should actually be, I think, potentially like a reasonable way to build the future in a secure way. So thank you very much.